And Lunden is a counselor, a writer, and the founder of the Center for Creative Healing, which is a licensed mental health agency. She's also an affiliate practitioner with the True North Health Center in Falmouth. And it's also worth noting that when she was 30, she learned to play the bass, and she joined a punk band called Don't Hit Your Sister. So that's very important. So please welcome Lunden.
It was cold in Maine. It was cold. And the snow was heaped in dirty piles on the side of the road, and the sidewalks were icy. And it got dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, sound familiar? It was the dead of winter in Portland, Maine, and I wanted out. So I flew to California, to Pacific Grove, AKA Butterfly Town, USA, to see the monarchs. I was 9 years old the first time I laid eyes on a monarch caterpillar. It was stretched out on a milkweed leaf, and it was something I'd never seen before. Beautiful, with yellow and black and white stripes. And I picked it up, and I put it in my hand, and I touched it with my finger, and its skin was smooth and soft as old leather. And I decided to take it home and make it my pet. And so I uprooted the milkweed, and I carried the caterpillar and the milkweed home, and I found a jar in the basement, and I put the milkweed in the jar, and I put the caterpillar on one of the leaves of the milkweed, and I pounded holes in the lid of the jar, and I screwed the lid on, and that's where that caterpillar lived for 2 weeks. And it lived there, and every day I gave it new milkweed, and every day it ate and it ate, and it grew and it grew, until one day it climbed up to the lid of the jar and hung there in a J. And it hung there like that for a long time, for what seemed like a really long time, which was probably about 24 hours before it began to wrestle with itself. And it seemed like it was turning itself inside out. And it did that for a good while, and then, like magic, it was a green, emerald green chrysalis with a gold-studded tiara. It was beautiful. And it stayed like that on the lid of the jar for a long time, for about 3 weeks. And for a long time it seemed like nothing was happening. And then one day I looked in, and I could see the outline of a butterfly's wing. I could see the orange of the monarch's wing, and I could see the black veins, and I could see the white polka dots. And I knew it was getting ready to emerge, which is exactly what it did one day, and it was quite sudden. And all of a sudden there it was, this monarch butterfly, clinging to the clear husk of the chrysalis, and hanging there. And its wings were not like what you would imagine. They were crumpled up and small. And as it hung there, waiting for its wings to dry, they stretched out and they straightened, and they became monarch butterfly wings. And it began to open and close its wings, open and close, and I knew that it was getting ready to fly. And so I unscrewed the lid of the jar, and I invited it up onto my finger, and I carried it outside. And I carried it outside, and I held it up to the sky, and I waited. And it took a long time. You'd think that a monarch butterfly would be really excited and it would fly off, but it took a long time, opening and closing its wings, waiting till it was ready. And then, when the moment was right, it took flight from my fingertips, fluttered off into the blue sky. When a monarch butterfly takes flight on its long migration south, it does not have to pay a $100 fee because its suitcase is 25 pounds over the limit. It does not have to take off its shoes, its watch, its coat and scarf in case of bombs. It does not have to watch the flight attendant demonstrate how to use an oxygen mask. It does not worry. It doesn't worry. What does a monarch experience on its own winged migration? It experiences, I think, the view. It experiences a silence I cannot imagine. It experiences a certain kind of peace, a free tilting. It knows nothing but how to ride the waves of the wind. But I, on that plane, I was having a different experience. It's a 7-hour flight from Maine to California. And that's a problem for me because I am exquisitely sensitive to chemicals. Chemicals like the ones that are found in perfumes and cologne and hair products and pesticide, chemicals that most people find innocuous. When the headache comes on, it feels like my brain is swelling up inside the cradle of my skull. A fog rolls in. I lose the ability to juggle a number of thoughts at once. But I have it easy compared to some people. Some people could never hazard the bad air on planes. Some of them are, well, you know, I'll tell you a little bit about what happens for some people. Some people, when they're exposed to chemicals, have seizures, or their airways close up, or they have heart palpitations, or disabling chronic fatigue or joint pain. Some people are so sick, they have to live in ceramic trailers in the desert. Some people are homeless. They live in their tents or in cars. They can't find safe habitat. 11% of Americans describe themselves as sensitive to chemicals. That's 30 million people. We call ourselves canaries in the coal mine, and our numbers are growing. In the late summer, if you go up on a walk along the eastern prom and walk along that path overlooking the ocean, you will see large numbers of monarchs. I already see nodding heads, like people have seen them. They're on the wild aster, and they're there filling up with nectar for their long trip south. The East Coast monarchs fly to Mexico. The West Coast monarchs fly to various spots all along the coast of California. They fly an average of 12 miles an hour, 46 miles a day, and as far as 2,200 miles to get to their winter destinations. But there's a problem. Monsanto's Roundup Ready crops have meant that 100 million acres of monarch habitat have been annihilated. And Roundup, that's the same product, that's the same weed killer that some people use on their lawns and on the cracks of their sidewalks. And every day, 6,000 acres are destroyed so that we can have more malls, more parking lots, more subdivisions. 6,000 acres. That adds up to 2.2 million acres a year. Soon, the monarchs will have nowhere left to land. When I arrived in Pacific Grove, AKA Butterfly Town, USA, it was after dark, too late to see the monarchs. I stayed at a little motel called the Butterfly Grove Inn, a little pink motel that was right next to the monarch sanctuary. In the morning, it was so cold I could see my breath. in the sanctuary, there was a quiet. I was alone there. The smell of eucalyptus hung heavy on the air. And I looked up into the eucalyptus trees, and they're very tall trees. And I could see them. I could see clusters of monarchs. What they do when it gets cold and they've migrated to their wintering destinations, they cluster together for warmth. And they wait for the thermostat, for the mercury to hit 55 degrees. It's the magical number when it's warm enough for them to fly. The year that in a good year, Pacific Grove, that little monarch sanctuary, sees as many as 45,000 monarchs. But the year that I was there was not a good year. Researchers counted just 4,000. But I looked up, and I saw those clusters of monarchs, and I waited for the mercury to hit 55 degrees. And I tell you what, 4,000 monarchs is more than I've ever seen in my life. And soon enough, one monarch let go of the cluster and fluttered off into the blue sky. And then another, and then another. And soon the sky was filled with beautiful orange monarchs fluttering against that blue sky. And I remembered back to when I was 9 years old, and I held that first monarch in my hand and watched it let go and take flight from my fingertips. Now, I want to teach you a word before I end this story. It's a word that I'd never heard before I started reading about the monarchs. Listen. Susurrus. Isn't that a beautiful word? Susurrus. I want you to say it with, I can tell you want to say it with me, and I want you to say it with me. So, susurrus. Again, susurrus. Now this time, softer. Susurrus. The dictionary definition is a soft whispering or rustling sound, a murmur or whisper. It's the word that entomologists use to describe the sound of hundreds, thousands, millions of butterfly wings suddenly bursting into flight.